Hi guys and gals, Shane Stevenson here at the Buffalo Naval Park, and for today's video it shows the power of oral histories. So we had the USS Little Rock Association had the reunion here, which they do every other year, so it could be biannually but not twice a year, and I had the absolute privilege of meeting Frank Palamara. Now, Frank Palamara was 99 years old, which means he was part of the Plankowner commissioning crew in 1945. I've never met anyone from the 45 to 49 crew. It's always those crew from 60 to 76 that I really interact with. So to have that interaction was A, a privilege, but B, absolutely informative. So I'm standing on the fantail because Frank Palamara, who is the photo in the title screen here, me standing with the gentleman in the title screen, was an ensign in 1945, and he was the catapult officer. You know, unless you really get a nice diary or you've met someone already, it's sometimes difficult to find information of obsolete materials like that on board a Cleveland class. So speaking to him, as I mentioned, was an honor and a privilege. So right off the bat, they carried 3 reconnaissance seaplanes, usually the SC-1 Seahawks, built right here in Buffalo. 5 pilots, 2 senior pilots, 3 junior pilots, and he was the catapult officer. From 1945 to 1947, they carried 2. One starboard, one port. In 1947, they removed the starboard catapult and seaplanes, and they made it watercraft stowage. But they did keep from 47 to 49, they kept the port side. And I've done a video about that prior. So what happens? The pilot gets in, starts up the engine, ready to go at full throttle, full launching throttle. He would put up 2 fists. Left and right hand, 2 fists. The officer would check, Frank would check with the chief. There was a chief underneath the launcher rail and the catapult. They would make eye contact. When the chief was ready, Frank would put up 2 fists, and the chief would be by the firing trigger, and he'd pull the trigger, and the plane would launch. Frank said he always waited till the 3rd uproll, after the pilot put up his 2 fists. So the ship's obviously yawing and going up and down and left to right. So it goes down, comes up, goes down, comes up, goes down. 3rd one, on the uproll, he'd launch. Or he'd give the signal to launch, I'm sorry. So Frank would then put up 2 fists, the chief would acknowledge it, fire pin. Now, I expected it to be an explosive charge that would set off the catapult. What did Frank say yesterday? It was a 5-inch shell. It was a 5-inch round that they would fire. It would go underneath, connect with the catapult, through the launcher, and off the ship. Tell me if you knew that. Please leave a comment if you knew that that was the actual charge, was a 5-inch shell that was fired. I had never read that or never seen it. So the plane takes off on the 3rd uproll, does what it needs to do, reconnaissance, scouting. Now it's ready to land. the ship rotates a little to the left or to the right to kind of smooth out the water, depending on port or starboard. He said the pilot would come in at a pretty steep angle, put the pontoon down, and slowly level off the nose of the plane. And again, hopefully that water is a little smooth from the rudder angle movement, all right, by the ship itself. The plane would glide onto a sled, all right, and then the sled would be connected to the ship and the crane, which would have been right here on the stern, right, goes over, picks up the plane, and puts it back on the launcher rail catapult system. So 2 planes were always on. A third was in the hangar here, right? So right in the center line, they would have had the hangar doors that open up like a sunroof, all right? And there would have been the third plane down there. And of course, spare parts as well. So 2 fists from the pilot, 2 fists to Frank, to the chief underneath the launcher rail and catapult system, pulls the trigger, a 5-inch shell goes off. Obviously, well, probably before the plane goes off, so that falls off into the sea, into the water, and the plane takes off. You can't get that unless you're reading someone's diary or having an oral history. So I hope I can meet Frank again, and his story is found elsewhere. He lives in Arizona, so his story is found elsewhere with organizations in Arizona. Frank Palamara served from 45 to 46 as a 21-year-old ensign catapult officer. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please leave questions, please leave comments. Tell me what you thought the trigger or the firing explosive charge was to launch the catapult off the launcher rail and then the seaplanes as well. And you know what? We will see you again soon.